Hello, and welcome to another episode of LGOtv Big Talk. And why Big Talk? You know, because I hate small talk. Now, my guest today, I met when he and I were both speaking at Fenway Park as part of the Spartan Leadership Program. And I fell in love. I fell in love with the story. I fell in love with the smile. I fell in love with his outlook. And you're going to fall in love with him too. Marko Cheseto came to the United States from Kenya to run, and run he did. He not only was running in college, but he was winning. He was winning in college, and then tragedy struck. And I'm going to let him tell you the story, but let's put it this way. He lost both his feet. He was a runner. He was a winner. He lost both his feet. In fact, he lost both his feet 9 years ago today. And he's currently the fastest marathon runner in the world on prosthetics. Marko Cheseto, welcome to Big Talk.
Hey, thank you, Laura, for having me.
I'm doing this, as you know, as part of research for my next book, which I'm calling Wonder Hell. And it's all about those moments of wonder when you achieve something more than you ever thought was possible, the wonder. And also, it's exhausting, it's stressful, it's anxiety filled, the hell, it's wonder hell. And in those moments of wonder hell, I believe that we figure out what we're made of. And most of the people I'm interviewing have had one moment of wonder hell in their lives, maybe two. But I think you've had three, and I want to talk with you today about those three moments: being recruited to run, losing your feet, and figuring out sort of who you are again, and then becoming the fastest man on prosthetics and what that means in terms of the work that you do, the lives that you inspire. So let's start by going back to that moment in Kenya. I know you had just finished running a 10K and some guy hands you a business card.
Yes, so I like to put it this way. So in Kenya, going to college, finished running, and this white guy walks to me. And he said something that I'm not sure if I know what he said. I am kind of paraphrasing what I think he said now that I understand what recruits tell students. He handed me a business card, and I'm thinking he said, "This is my business card. Texas Tech University, we're recruiting runners, and we are interested in you. So if you're interested in coming to Texas Tech University, you can go online, check our program, and then there's a link there that you can apply." Few things to just clarify here: a website, a link, and online. Then 2008, those were words that I didn't even know what it meant. Online back then, growing up, was how we dried our clothes outside on a wire line. A website, I don't have anything for that. And a link could mean something like a road that is linking, for instance, Kenya and Uganda, for example. So I just took it, put it somewhere in my pocket, went back to college, graduated, and went back to my village and forgot about it. And this was 2006. And then graduated in September of that year, went home. A few months later, in 2007, my cousin, who has a post office, a box, it's a BR box, called me, says, "Marko, you have a package from the US." And in my head, I'm going, this is a big scam. I don't know anyone in the US who would send me something. I say, "Hey, bring it," and then we look. Brought it home. The first thing that I saw was a logo that was on that small card that guy gave me. I say, "I remember this thing." So then it clicked. I think it must be from that white guy that gave me something that I didn't know what it was. Opened it, and sure enough, it was from Texas Tech. I gave him my physical contact when we met. So he wrote it somewhere and remembered to remind me through a letter. So he was kind of asking if I wanted to come to the US, which I was excited. And, I knew this was an opportunity, and it never was a scam, as I thought. So the challenge started right there, figuring out One, how to sign up to have an email, and two, where would I go to do that? And three, how do I know where to go to take an SAT or a TOEFL exam? These are things that I don't even know where, if it's over in Kenya then.
So you, at this point, you weren't running and being told by coaches there, if you run really fast, that you might get recruited, you might be able to go. I mean, this wasn't in the United States. We look at Kenyan runners and we're like, oh my God, they're so fast. Like we know Kenyan runner means fast. You weren't. There wasn't like a system that you were being recruited into at this point, like when
No,
you
no,
know,
no,
while you
no.
were in college.
No, there was not a system in college. I was just being a college athlete in Kenya, just running because I loved it, and I was able to travel to places, particularly when I was in high school, around Kenya for free without paying. And now, so I was just running in college. So this guy knew, because I think on previous years he had recruited on the in the collegiate championships in Kenya. So he was coming to see if he could find some potential runners. And then I was one of them who was a good runner.
Yeah, I'll say. So so you get recruited um to Texas, but you don't end up in Texas. You end up in Alaska of all places.
Yes, so in that process, 2007, we had election in Kenya and there were violence. After I had done my research, was able to get to a friend of mine who had an email, was able to communicate with the coach, and he directed me on where to go in Kenya. I'm in Kenya, I'm a Kenyan, but this coach
Incredible.
in America is the one helping me navigate the system in Kenya, telling me where I could go and register for SAT or TOEFL exam. So I did all that and did my application for Texas Tech University. But right in the middle of my applications, there was an election, and the election was disputed, and the entire country went south. There was violence everywhere. So I couldn't travel to the city to access my email and communicate with the coach. There was nothing like a smartphone then to just access my email at home. February of 2008, things calmed down and I was able to go back to the city. And the coach, I emailed him, and he emailed back, said, I had not heard from you, so we don't have scholarships at the moment, but I will
Mm.
refer you to a friend in Iona College, New York. His friend, who was coaching Iona College in New York, had applied to be as an assistant coach at the University of Alaska, Anchorage. So he was the one who referred me to Alaska, and then the Alaska head coach recruited me, and that is how I ended up in Alaska.
Now, when you got on the plane to go to Alaska, did you know about snow?
No,
Did you know what you were in for? The Miami girl in me needs to ask this question. Did you know what you were in for?
no, I didn't know what I was in for, but I thought I had a pretty good idea of what snow is. I was not a geography student, so I didn't study what my friends in college were talking about, or in high school, college were talking about, snow, glaciation, and all that. So I was the government guy and civics. So, but then my hometown, my mom's house is at 8,000 feet above the sea
Hmm.
level, very cold. So my imagination was, they say in Alaska, the sun just comes for a short while. So I'm thinking in my head, oh, okay, I think I have a pretty good idea of how snow forms. It's accumulation of cold in the morning dew over time, because they don't have enough sun to melt it. It piles up, and in 6 months, you have a bunch of snow on the ground. When I got in Alaska, that was not the story of how snow just came from the sky. I'm like, what is this white stuff that when you're out there, you can't get wet? It was just a bizarre thing. But before the snow, though, we landed in Alaska. It was me and my other friend at 8 p.m., 8:30 p.m. And the sun was up. It looked like a midday in Kenya. It was very confusing. And this time, the English that the flight attendants, the pilots spoke were not aligning with the kind of English that I could understand. They said
Mm,
something like, final destination, your local time. I don't know what they say. Whatever I am saying now is what I'm assuming they said then, having now the privilege to fly around and understand what they say when you land. So I'm thinking they said, "Oh, welcome to Anchorage," and
yeah.
it. But yeah, me and my friend, we were so confused.
So, so you go and you start running in Alaska. You do really well, right? You're showing huge promise. You're winning. You're like all league, all conference. There's a lot of pressure in that moment to not screw up, right? Because you have all these people at home that are watching you, that are counting on you, that are cheering for you. Did you feel um, that increased pressure while you were there, or were you still like just running because you loved running?
Oh, I was running as I loved running. And I went to a boarding school in Kenya, and it was a pass mark. It was very, you had to do well in school. And I did a lot of things in school too. I was running, I was doing drama and music, all these things. And I was able to manage it. So that was not a problem to me. The only culture shock was the snow and the prolonged sun during the summertime.
So then you recruit your cousin to come,
Yes.
and your cousin also showing promise as a runner. He comes. It must have been nice to have him there.
Oh, it was so much fun. You're in, and we're in our mid 20s, like, and away from our parents. Nobody was telling us what to do. We were, boys, in college, 12,000 miles away from home. Who would even tell my mom what we were doing? We were having so much fun, but in a good way. We were, I don't drink, my cousin didn't drink. So we were just having a good time and being adults.
And then you get a phone call from him.
Yes, and he called me and said he wanted to talk to me. It was a Friday, February 18th of 2011. And I said, I'm still working. It was around maybe 2 p.m. It was afternoon. I'm not sure about the exact time. And I said, I'll come home later and we'll talk about this. And me in my head, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this guy has a white chick that wants to talk about me and want to see if I will improve it or not. And he's, you know, my cousin. So I wanted to like, oh, well, I'm so excited to go hear what this kid has to tell me.
Because at that point, you'd been just having a great time.
Yeah.
You're
Oh, yeah.
successful in running, you're socializing, you're having you're college kids, you're enjoying yourselves.
Oh, yeah. We have our own money that
Mm.
we don't have to ask our parents that what do I need to buy today? So it was just a good time. So, but then I went home that evening and he was no more. He had hanged himself.
And had he, as you look back on it now, were there signs? Can you see a pattern that might maybe you missed in real time, or is it just never made sense?
No, none, not at all. And after that happened, we had a lot of Kenyans, student athletes who are at that university. And there was some who are even more, his classmates, and trying to ask them, did you guys hear anything? None. There were even friends of his from out of state. They were going to colleges in other states, reached out to them to maybe inquire if there was something, but no, everyone was like, no, that was just a surprise.
So, my running coach Rick Muir is listening to this. He's watching our interview, and as you know, he runs the Marathon Coalition, which is the group of charity runners who run Boston every year. And he says that he dedicates runs to people all the time as long runs, and he says he's going to dedicate his next run to William. So that is really sweet, and thank you, Rick, for watching and being part of this. I can't wait for you and Rick to meet each other. You guys will like light the world on fire with your optimism and inspiration. So he hangs himself, and there you are. You're suddenly there's like a hole in your world.
Yes,
How do you manage that? Because you still have to keep running. You don't have a choice. If you stop running, you lose your scholarship. So you still have to keep performing at this high level.
yes. And, there was this part too that, the guilt moment that, what could I have done to prevent this from happening? There's that part too. And, particularly when he
Yes, the
tried to reach
guilt.
out, it would have been different if he didn't say anything, even though he did not say why he wanted to talk to me, but at least he tried to reach out to talk to me. So I'm thinking, imagine had I even gone home to just see him and be like, okay, or had I even told him, hey, come to the library or where I was at the moment, maybe I would have, So those thoughts going through my mind over and over and over. And it's funny in life how like there's one thing that sticks in you after an experience, having friends for a long time. We grew up with this guy in Kenya. So I know him very well. So nothing stuck with me like his last phone call. Like I really tried to remember other things that he said to me, and I could not remember anything else. Even today, as we talk, I always try to like think of funny moments that we had together, and I could not even remember one. But that phone call, I cannot forget it. Like if I just dedicate myself to thinking about how did that phone call come, I even know the phone that I had that time. It's just I vividly remember that, but I don't remember all these other things. So mental health, depression started creeping in. But Kenyan man, and I'm sure even most people here in the United States, nobody sometimes accepts that they are going cuckoo. I
Yeah.
like to say it that way, but it's not going cuckoo. It's the way we think we are. But no, I was in denial that no, this is not, I'll get over this. I'll run, I'll do other things, I'll forget very soon.
Right, but
Never.
trauma like rewrites patterns in the brain, and all if what you were saying before about how you can't remember other things, but you remember that phone call, you remember the you hear his voice, you remember the phone that you had in your hand. Trauma rewrites the brain, and so even if the rational part of your head says, "I'll get over it, I'll keep running," right? This is like, I didn't know anything that you want to do, that the trauma is rewriting your brain with the survivor guilt that's just creating an echo chamber inside of your own head.
Yes, and your subconscious mind is always thinking that it's everything that you've experienced in life is present.
Hmm.
It doesn't have a distinction between then and now. It's always like, okay, so yeah, part of that was just right there. But finally, I was able to accept that I was going through a depression and I needed a medical help.
Hmm.
So then I, had to go and talk to someone. So they prescribed some antidepressants for me. But still, there's that part of me that's this is not real. This is not me. This is not who I am. I really think I need to. There's something that I am not getting that I need to do. And I was not comfortable sharing what I was going through because, and at the same time, I'm going, well, what is this that someone else is going to do anyway? Like, this is something in you, in your head that, no one else is going to understand. It will be a waste of your time to try to talk to somebody, which is not true. These are the things that I'm telling myself. I'm convincing myself.
Right. Well,
But
especially like if you're an athlete and you already know how to dig deep and get to that next gear, that next gear, that next gear, like you know how to talk yourself into working harder, managing pain, muscling through, to think that somebody else is going to give you something you don't already have inside at the same time as your trauma is rewriting your brain to, put you in denial and deal with survivor guilt. I don't know how you have a fighting chance in that.
but still there's that, the power of mind, regardless of how this power
Hmm.
is pushing you. It could be pushing you in a wrong direction or in a negative direction or in a positive direction, but there's that powerful influence
Hmm.
of the mind. So my powerful influence then was the negative side. So I
Hmm.
had this, friends who like really were reaching out to me. That summer of 2011, we went fishing, we went gold mining, all these things that preoccupied me. And then the winter comes. Now there is limited time to go do outdoor stuff. And the seasonal side effects of now we have sad, it's dark, nothing else to do. And I think looking back now, I think that might have contributed to like that me sinking more into depression. And at this time I was still taking my
Yes. Yes.
antidepressant. November 9th, 9 years ago, 2011, I took my antidepressants and went for a run. And then I just woke up from a dream that was a real dream. And I was stuck in the wooded area of where I was. And the only thing I could see was the moon, and it was clear skies, very bright. And I am surprised how clear my mind was when I just came back to my senses. I knew I was in a wrong place, and if I don't do anything, that's what I was telling myself, I don't think I'll make out of this. And I think knowing that, I gained some strength, knowing that if I don't do anything, I'm not going to make out. So I was able to use the trees that were around me to try and stand up. And it was very difficult for me to stand up. I was able to stand up, but I wouldn't keep myself standing. I would just flat out fall down. Kept trying until I was able to stabilize and walk. Luckily, I don't know, it seemed like I didn't go too far before I could find a groomed trail, and I followed it, ended up in a hotel lobby. And that was where I knew how long I was out there. This guy was so surprised that you are the runner that they are looking for. Your pictures are all over the news, everywhere. Where have you been for 3 days? And that's the last part I remember about that part.
3 days.
Yes, more than 60 hours, more than
So for
56
3 days,
hours.
so that's incredible. So you take the antidepressants, a lot of them, and you go out for this run, and you wake up and it's 3 days later. You have no idea it's been 3 days. You've been out in the snow for, I think I read it was 56 hours. You
Yes,
walk into
56
this
plus, yes.
Yes, you walk into this hotel and the guy's like, "Dude, you're like your face is like clearly, you're unusual in Alaska, right?" You
Yes,
walk in, it's not hard to recognize you're the 6'1", skinny as a rail Kenyan who's walking in. Um, and that's it. So you wake up, you again, you're in the hospital.
yes,
And I remember you telling the story at Fenway Park where the doctor asked how you were doing, and you told him that your hands really hurt,
yes.
but your feet were fine. You didn't feel your feet. Your feet were
No,
fine.
yeah. And the doctor
Not
goes,
so fine.
Your feet are not so fine because pain is a sign of life. So if you're not feeling anything, that is not good news. But then at that time, there's still part of me that, the reality is not kicked in. That was just that statement. So I did. But then the thing that stuck with me is that good part of an athlete, like, oh, okay, pain is good. Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
that's good. But I was not too
you
worried
recognize
about
that,
non-pain.
right? Pain is a
I'm
sign
not
of
worried.
life. You felt pain, you know pain.
That's good, but I'm not worried about the non-pain in my legs, because why would you even want pain in your hands and in your legs? So it was a score then in my legs not having that pain. I said, oh, I'm good. So this was November 9th. November 9th. So they did some, they are now checking if I still had blood flow. My hands were fine. The used electrolytes, they just check. Like, okay, yeah, they could see some spots on my hands, but my lower extremities just too dark, nothing, just dark. Nothing was going on. So on the 12th, so 9:30, by the 12th of November, they are like, yeah, no, we have to amputate your feet. And at this time, I can see in myself, they were starting to rot. I could see like my fingernails are about to fall down, and my toenails, I mean. So yes, I knew too that this is not good. But then, the doctor says we are going to cut your legs. And I'm sitting there asking myself, what am I supposed to tell myself now? Is there anything really to just say? Like there was nothing that I had to tell myself. It was that moment that you're like saying, okay, I'm just waiting to see what will happen next. Everything at that point was not in my control. It was just waiting and like, okay, as crazy as it sounds, let's see what will happen. And then,
So, were that's shocking to me that you weren't like, in denial, or you weren't negotiating like, well, can we wait another day? I mean, this is like your life is in your legs because it's what brought you to this country. It's what brought you to college. It's what's giving you the education. It's what's giving you the scholarship. And or maybe, is there part of you that's like, this is what I get for not answering the call? I mean, like, I just like, you were so sanguine. You were just so like, let's just see what happens. Let's see what happens next. You were just, I guess you were a nursing student, right? So you understood the science of
yes, I
what's going
understood
on
the
there.
science of gangrene and what it can do to you. So I knew that, looking at my
So you knew it was coming.
feet, I
Yeah.
was like, yes, I see what the doctor is saying. But then what can I do? Is there anything else that I can do?
Yeah.
But then at that point, I really, I just became numb. Like I had nothing
Yes.
to tell myself. Because usually you go to a hospital and then you see progress. But I went to the hospital looking good. I looked fine the first day. But then it started like getting worse and worse. Each day, my feet were just getting so big. They were swelling and starting to get dark. And, so yes, I knew that this was not going well for me.
So they have surgery when you wake
Yes,
up
November 17th, today, 9 years
9
ago.
years ago. 9 years ago today. So how'd the surgery go?
It didn't go as I thought it should have gone. I wake up and my first question to the nurse is, what went wrong? And the nurse looks at me and say, what do you mean what went wrong? I said, why was the surgery aborted? I said, no, we did it. I said, no, you didn't. I said, what do you mean you didn't? I said, I can still move my toes now. Oh, they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, yes, yes, yes. We forgot to tell you this part. That is how you will feel for the rest of your life. You will feel your feet, your toes, whatever, for the rest of your life. And at that point, I was not able to get up and physically look at my lower extremity. So there was that part of me that I was so convinced that this is just to make me feel good at that time.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so it was
That's
just like,
incredible. And so so then what's the path then from being a double amputee to running again? Did you think, I mean, when this happened, did you think, okay, yeah, I'll keep going, there'll be things I can do, or did you have a plan?
at that time, while I was in the hospital, I surrendered my control. I didn't surrender it to anybody, but I told myself I cannot be too worried about controlling stuff because one, it's evident that I didn't have the power to control things. Look, my cousin committed suicide, and I thought I could control that. I was not able to. You've lost your own legs. You didn't have control over that. So I said, you know what? This remaining section or this section of my life going forward, let me not worry too much about like things to control. So I was like, okay, I'm laying down here in the hospital and just let and ride the wave. I'm not gonna and see what happens. But then I started having friends visit me. 2012 was the Olympics and the Paralympics. My friends would just come with stories of the infamous South African Oscar story, showed me the things
Yes.
he was doing and all that. So that gave me kind of hope in life that, man, you know what? And surprisingly, I was starting to feel better at this point in my life. And I did something that like 2 days after my amputation that I'm not a doctor, so I'm not recommending people to do what I'm about to say. I stopped taking my antidepressant, just cold turkey, no cut it into half. I said, I'm done with this. I think I can manage what I'm going through without medication. I think I'm telling myself, I think this is where my problem went south, taking this antidepressant. So I stopped. A nurse would bring an antidepressant, say, hey, this. I say, oh, yeah, put it there. I'll take it. Then I'll just take it and like throw it in a trash somewhere and just never said anything. Because I knew at this point that if I said anything, they will maybe try to fix the craziness now of me refusing medicine and give me the medicine the other way. And I said, no,
Mm.
I'm, and I didn't want to tell people that I am feeling good, even though I was from the inside. But to not make people worry, I was telling them what I thought they wanted to hear. How are you feeling? I say, the same feeling that you would 3 days after your amputation, not knowing what to do next. But inside me, something told me there is a lot that I can do next. My first prostheses were fitted on me, stood on them the first day, walked around a walker, and then I said, no, I don't think I need this walker. I'm I'm kind of a deviant person in a way sometimes. Yes, I trust processes, but not some. I trust the processes, but sometimes I see how can I make this process to fit my narrative in a good way. So I say, what? I am in a hospital, a good place that if you fall your face down and bust your head, they'll take you right somewhere in an OR and fix it. This is the place to try all the crazy things that you want to try as an amputee. So I said, I don't need a walker. They think, no, you do. I said, no, I don't. And then to their surprise, I was able to walk around, not like really good, but was able to make a step without a walker. And that was when I told myself, you know what? Running is the same fashion of walking. You just walking, but in a faster way. So I say, hey, I think my next move is to walk faster again, then turn it to running. And that is what I did. Just trusted the process, pushed myself, and started training again. Got my running feet through a non-profit organization, Challenge Athlete Foundation, and I started running again.
And it's yours. The story is incredible. So so how long was it from the amputation to the running again? Was it weeks? Was it months? Like what was the timeline of that?
I could have done it in months, but the recommendation from my surgeon was I needed to give myself enough time to heal. So I was able
Okay, so
to,
you listened to him at least there. You listened to
yes,
the
yes,
surgeon at least a little
yes.
bit.
I listened because and the reason I listened to is because he did not tell me this is not going to be possible. He said, yes,
Mm.
you will do whatever you want, but just give yourself some, don't be too hard on yourself. Because once you get going, there will be no time for you to relax. You will just do all the things that you wanted to do. So I said, okay, I will listen to you on this one. So March 20, so my amputation was November 17, 2011. By March of 2012, I was just doing some 5Ks, kind of run, walk, jog. But then my real running started 2013, around May of 2013.
Okay, and
This
what
was,
when you say you're real running, how do you define that?
I define that putting on my running prosthesis and beating an able-bodied athlete and just
Woo!
showing them that I'm right there with them. And I was trained with the University of Alaska Anchorage students, and we would go to a workout, and I would just be there, and I could see in the eyes of the coach, like almost him telling the athlete, I cannot believe that you guys are just almost getting beaten by someone without legs. But, I think I was sensitive to say that, but I could see that.
Yeah, there's that story about Boston on Heartbreak Hill where, you like I forget the runners' names, but one runner is like chasing the other one and finally beats him at the, on the hill and like breaks his heart. And it's like the story of Heartbreak Hill. And I feel like you probably broke a lot of hearts in Alaska of these poor students who like don't even have frontal lobes and they're trying to do the logic in their brain of like, how's this guy beating me? So that must have felt amazing. That must have, I mean, just the brain chemistry, the endorphins that are shooting through you, right? You're running fast again, and you feel good, and you are feeling able-bodied, right? That must have felt like a normalcy, some kind of return to like who you were, like finding your identity again.
Yes. And, in my, you know, now, it's one of those things that I call it learning to live with your new self. Because after going through what I went through, I have realized that a lot of people, the struggles that we have in life comes when people cannot reconcile their new self
Mm.
at that point of their life. And then we end up thinking that there is a low and high point in life. That, in my own belief now, having gone through what I went through, I think there is nothing called low point in life. There's no such thing as, oh, can you describe that low point in your life? No, I like to call it that moment of your life.
Mm.
Because even with me and my legs, I still had a lot of problems and challenges that I needed to navigate in life. Now I don't even have my feet. Same thing. It's not the reality of life. You have to learn how to navigate life with challenges. It's how it's designed. Our society today is one that talks about success, 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 success. And then we have this success. I remember growing up, and my mom sometimes would try to silence me. I like to talk a lot. And my mom would be like, hey, Marco, you this talk, this will not take you anywhere. Just relax, listen, talk. So there's that part of a society. But then the most paid individuals sometimes in life are people who talk, and tell jokes, and they get a lot of money. I've never heard of a celebrity who has earned a lot of money by being mute on stage for 1 hour. Never. But then I couldn't convince my mom that way. So I convinced myself that, this is how I will be for the rest of my life. I either embrace it or let it define who I am. So I embraced it. I took it and I said, I'm not going to let this define who I am. And I told myself, why would I really care about what somebody says, how I look like? I said, I don't. So there is this good part that the defiance that I told me is in me. I started cultivating that in a good way. I say, I need to nurture this part in me, the part that I always want to prove things wrong. You're not going to do this. Oh, you want to see me try it and do it? Yeah. So I cultivated that thing in me to say, you know what? For you to succeed and do the things that you want to do, you cannot look at other people and say, what are they thinking about you? How do you even know that someone is thinking about you? They are thinking about their own things, and you're wasting your time thinking they're thinking about you. They say sometimes when someone is hungry on a street, they're walking, they can't even see anything else other than trying to figure out where a restaurant, or if someone is thirsty, they can't see anything else. They're just trying to figure out a water fountain. So leave that to them. And I knew that I am the only one who hangs around with myself 100% of the time. And if I cannot believe on someone, on that part of me that hangs out with me all the time, I will live a very challenging life. So I chose to be influenced by my own thoughts in a good way. Yeah, I'm not discrediting that this my journey did not involve other people. Of course, yes. I'm talking about the positive influences, yes. But the one that we sometimes want to think, what do you think about? Like thinking, what would people think about me going cuckoo? Those are the ones that I say, I'm not going to think like that. And who cares? I could have gone through that part of life, but I want to use that for a purpose because I remember when I was in the hospital, a lot of people who visited me, I never had someone who told me, hey, I am a mental health survivor. Nobody. And I said, man, how sad is it that there are so many people who are going through this, but they don't have anybody visiting them and relating with them, telling them, you worried about having a mental breakdown? Do you want to hear what a true mental breakdown is that I went through and I beat it? I am a hero and you will be a hero yourself. People ask me, how was that moment when you attempted to kill yourself? In my head, my defiance kicks in. I'm saying, how do you know I attempted to kill myself? Have you asked someone with a heart attack and said, hey, how was that feeling like when you almost allowed yourself to be killed by a heart attack? No, this is a mental, this is a sickness that, unless we wanted to say psychiatrists are fake doctors. I'm not saying they are fake doctors. They are real doctors because there is a real disease called mental health.
Yes.
So it's us sometimes that we bring a lot of stigma to these people who are going through mental health, trying to put it in them like they are responsible of their sickness. They are the one who almost did this. When you're going through a mental health crisis, there is nothing called a plan in that. Whatever you're trying to do, it's not a plan. You're trying to salvage yourself from that situation. That's all it is. It's not a plan. And even those who write it down and plan it, and it's not that they're trying to do that. They're planning it so that they're trying to say, is there anything better that I can do to get out of this? It's all about, I want to get out of this. My college professor one time was teaching us, said, I love him. The way he put it, it stuck with me. He said, there's nothing called wrong and right choice. It's the consequences of those choices.
So I love this idea, right? I mean, I wrote a book with the subtitle "How to Ignore Everybody, Carve Your Own Path, and Live Your Best Life." So, ignoring what other people say is like that's right down the limitless alley. And my favorite quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, and it's hard to pick one because she had so many. But one of my favorite quotes from her is, "You would worry a lot less about what other people thought about you if you realized how seldom they did." Right? Like other people they're worried about themselves. They're not worried about us. They're worried about themselves. We're all so worried about ourselves, so we're not worried about other people. And yet we do all have that worry, like, well, these people don't think I'm good enough. Those people don't think I'm achieving enough. These people, I'm not succeeding in the way that they define succeeding. And I think right now, what you said earlier was so poignant about the danger comes in the inability to reconcile who you were with who you are and who you will become. And I think especially now during coronavirus, where so many people are having to reinvent themselves professionally, where they're sort of examining what life looked like before, what life looked like after. A friend of mine posted something on Facebook the other day where he was asking what your last trip was, and I couldn't remember my last trip. It was I flew somewhere to speak somewhere and do a gig for a client, but I can tell you exactly the first trip, which is the one that we canceled, right? It was like a family trip to Hawaii. And I was reflecting on the fact that I I am focused on what I lost and not what I had before. And I think that there's a lot of that's part of the problem, right? We live in the society of like, who are you? What do you do? What do you have? And anything that knocks that to the side really affects our identity. So that struggle with the question of identity, right? Like, how do you reconcile who you were before with who you're going to be? But then you start running and you're running and you're running fast and you decide to compete at the marathon level. So let's go into this third piece of wonder hell with what we the time we have remaining, and talk to me about marathon running.
It's and this is like it's applicable in anything in life. Life is a marathon in itself. You have
Yes.
no idea what's going to happen in mile 2, in mile 20, or even on the start line. But you've got to trust the process. But the process doesn't happen on the actual event day. You
Right.
cannot just sit down and go and craft your plan on the start line. You have to have your plan prior to that.
Mm.
And secondly, you have to convince yourself that you are the winner. You are a champion yourself. Because if you go there with a limited mentality of, oh, yeah, I know there's so many people out there who have trained way better than me, then there's no reason of you going to that. Just like in life. If you just cruising in life saying, you know what, I'm not, this life is not serving me well, then it's going to be challenging. Just like I always tell my audience, happiness is a skill. You can't just sit down there and say, oh, yeah, I want to be happy today. You've got to do things that will cumulatively add up to happy things. And happiness doesn't mean that things are going in the way you wanted them to go. 2020, this is not how I wanted my 2020 to be like. But I'm still enjoying 2020, trying to find out things, flying with a mask, going. I joke to my friends sometimes, say, hey, remember in like 2019, you couldn't go to a bank covering your face, and now you can't go to the bank without covering your face. So learning to live with what life presents you at the moment, I think, is the most important thing. But then people sneak in the thing, but there are the uncertainties in 2020, which I am not ignoring. Yes, there are a lot of uncertainties in this coronavirus era. But then go to 2019. What was so sudden about 2019 that you knew? What were the things that you're like, oh, 2019 was so sudden for me? No, there's a lot of uncertainties in life. It's different forms of uncertainties.
So do you have inspiration of things or people or the things that you look towards that are giving you this great mindset? Or is were these coaches along the way? Were they books you read, movies, parents? Where does the optimism come from, and the ability to sort of roll with the punches? I mean, a lot of athletes I know are not roll with the punches types. We're all kind of control freaks, right? Like, you control your fuel, you control your sleep, you control your nutrition, you can control your training. Where do you get your inspiration from?
Growing up, my dad had two wives, 20 kids.
Two
11,
wives and 20 kids.
yes,
Okay.
11 from my mom and 9 from the other mom.
That was not the question. That was not the answer I was expecting, by the way. So I'm curious to see where this goes.
So we had to craft our own way of influencing yourself, of seeing the positive side of life. I'm not saying growing up with 20 siblings was a hell in itself, but it was a challenge. You had to prioritize what you wanted to do. You could get pushed. You can get, you come home, there's no lunch because all the other kids did not remember you were still there. But you cannot sit and dwell and whine about that the whole time. Life in itself is not fair. So that is where I grew up knowing that, Life is not fair, but it doesn't mean that your life is defined by someone else who almost screwed it up. It's you. You can
Mm.
fix the screw ups that other people are trying to throw on your way. So it's up to us, up to you, up to me as an individual to tell yourself, what way would I want to go? Running, there are 8 lanes on a truck, but sometimes they put 50 athletes, say, on your mark, set, go. And then they want, you cannot finish and then come and say what went wrong. They just count results on how you crossed finish line. Some people cross with one shoe, some cross with blisters, some cross and throw up. Nobody is gonna say, let's adjust these results because imagine what this guy would have done, this lady would have done had he not been nauseated running round and round. No. The final thing they check is where were you crossing the finish line? What position were you in? So I got my inspiration through that, like looking at life in itself. Guess the other thing that when I came to the US, I love watching the news. I started listening to radio when I was 5 years old. I am that freak. I am not like, yeah, let me put it this way. I don't get sleepless nights knowing what is going on around the world. I get sleepless nights not knowing what is out there. So when I'm driving around, it drives my wife crazy. Like,
Mm.
why? You are not an old guy. Why are you on BBC? Because I don't want to wake up and just be oblivious and assume that things are the way. I don't want to wishful think the way things are. I want to know what is there. So coming to the US, I have listened to this. There is 1% population in the US that are so rich that the entire population don't even have what they have. So I'm sitting here going, okay, are you gonna dwell and get stressed about the 1%? Or are you going to start thinking on how to be that 1%? And not necessarily to be like a billionaire, but to teach myself that, hey, there's a process, there's a system that you can follow and get yourself somewhere. You can't just sit there and whine about all these things that are happening. You have to actively chase that. If it's a job that you don't like, but your goal is to pay your rent and not be homeless, figure out a way of doing that to please you, unless you have another way of changing that, then yes, change it.
So in 2018, you become the second double amputee in history to finish the New York City Marathon in under 3 hours. And you're like, that's cool, but I didn't win. So you decide to run Boston. Did you decide to run Boston and decide that you were going to win Boston? But did you do the same thing? You like did the training and you went up to it expecting that this was what you were going to do? Or did you win? Did I get that wrong about New York?
So I started, I had not run a marathon as an able-bodied athlete, never ever. So I went to New York in 2018, 2 hours 52 minutes. Then Chicago, no, Boston. So when I was going to Boston, I was looking on the previous year, what happened. It was a crazy day, very cold, windy, rainy, having had frostbite, my body is very sensitive to cold.
Yes.
So I was going to Boston with a divided mindset that, depending on how it is, I am not going to run. And not because I didn't want, and not because it's just for health reasons. I can't do it because of how sensitive my body is to cold. So I would have created another hell on myself. So, but then the day was
And
nice.
this
So
is
I went.
interesting because for people who are not, sorry, I just want to say for people who are not marathon runners, this isn't like you just decide to show up and run or not run. Like you're putting in months of training to lead to this point. So this is like this, you're not just deciding to just not go out and do a run that day. Like this is aborting a 3-4 month process,
Oh, yes.
depending on
And running a lot. Like this morning, I already did a 10K, 10 miles, not 10K, 10 miles already this morning. So this is like you have to train your body. It's 2 hours of running, and it's not just running slow, it's running quick. So prior to a marathon, you have to have at least 12 to 14 weeks of running close to what you want to run on your marathon. Like for instance, Boston, no, Chicago. I ran Chicago 2 hours and 37 minutes, 23 seconds. So 14 weeks prior to that, I was prepping my body to hold that speed of less than 6 minute mile pace for 26 miles in order to keep up with that. You can't just show up and push your body through something you've never trained it for. Just like anything else in life, you can't just fantasize on things you want to do in life and think you can. You have to practically put them in practice. You have to know how to make decisions. You can't tell yourself, I wanted to do something financially next year without you knowing that if you still have clothes in your closet that have tags, you didn't need that, because obviously if it has a tag, that's a new cloth that you've spent your money that you've not worn.
So you do end up running Boston.
Yes, I ended up running Boston because it was a good day, and I ran it. And this is I had a goal of running Chicago, my fastest time, but Boston was my second marathon. So I said, you know what, this is still a practice run to get used to running marathon, because you have to learn how to do it too. But at mile 22, I looked at my time and I realized I am still within the record that someone had run in Chicago. Chicago course is more flatter. I'm running in a very hard course in Boston, and I'm within the record. 4 miles to go. I say, no, I have to do it today. I kind of have to. So yeah, so I kept doing what I was doing, and I was able to run a 2:42, broke the previous record, which gave me a lot of confidence to do the Chicago Marathon, where I ran a 2:37.
I mean, so running, I mean, Boston is crazy. I mean, I've done Boston twice and I've run Chicago once, and my fastest time is not 2:37, 23. But Boston is, significant. There's a significant uphill, right? The Heartbreak Hill, where you're going uphill for some miles, right around mile 19, where all the lactic acid is in your quads. It's pretty tough. But then you crush it, right? Chicago's flatter, but you crush it 2:37:23. Okay, this breaks your old record by 5 full minutes. I mean, that's a significant chunk of time. So what's next now? Do you keep going? Do you get faster and faster? Or how do you how do you manage the pressure the expectation that the Paralympic world, that the para-athlete world has on you now?
This is how I manage that. I never promised anybody that I'm going to do this to break. I go with what I know I am capable of. So that doesn't put a lot of pressure with me, because I'm just pushing myself and not setting limits for myself. I said, where people ask me, how do you do this? I just run and run until I get so tired that I can't move. Then that is when so that is basically what I'm doing. I'm just like, okay, particularly on my practices, nobody's watching me. I just push myself and see how far I can push myself. Then no, okay, I can push. There's a practical part of pushing yourself too. So then I know where I am and where I can comfortably do a 26 mile. So my next move is to run a qualifying able body Olympic time. So that is my next goal.
I have no doubt that you are going to make it and probably crush it. I love that idea of using the time when nobody's watching to really push yourself, and figure out what you're made of. It is incredible. And I love that it started off by doing that in the safe space of the hospital, right? Pushing yourself. And if you fall on your face, they'll fix you up. And now you have built that confidence to push yourself, knowing that you're going to pick yourself up and fix it. I think that's incredible. Marko, I could talk to you all day long. Your stories are incredible and so inspiring. Tell the people who are listening where they can find you if they want more doses of inspiration and motivation.
I am very active on social media. Just go and look me up at Marathon Marko. And it's just the word marathon and then Marko, Marko. You will find me there.
You will find him there, and you will find him there running and running and running. So if you are somebody who needs a dose of inspiration, who is looking to get rid of all of your excuses and to just do it not in a like, crush it, yeah, pain kind of way, but like in a happy, inspirational, you got this type of way, Marathon Mark is your guy. Thank you so much for joining me today. It has been an honor.
Thank you for having me.